All right, everybody. We are back again for season 2 of the Coach's Compass. It's your boy, Coach Coop. Right, my boy, Coach Jay, could not be here with us today because he is currently still traveling, living that retired life now, and enjoying everything. Now, remember, hit that like, subscribe, comment button down below so we can continue to have this thing grow and continue to bring on cool guests from all over the world. We got another special guest with us today. We got Coach Brennan Thompson. He's a speed trainer for athletes in the St. Louis area, but also working with athletes online. He has coached hundreds of champions, also has helped 3,000 plus athletes get faster. Coach, thank you and welcome to the Coach's Compass.
Thanks for the intro and thanks for having me. I'm happy to be on.
So what got you started in the realm of training speed? Because I mean, it's a huge aspect nowadays. A lot of people are trying to touch on, but I wouldn't say are doing it great, but there are people that are doing great things like yourself. So what got you started in it?
So, my background as an athlete was based around all speed and power. I used to play football, basketball, baseball, track, soccer. I did gymnastics for a while. And basically, as high school went on, I went from having this broad array of sports that I was in and really going all in on performance to then, as injuries started to mount, I started to focus more and more on one thing, which became track. And, after my ACL surgery, my junior season that sort of ended my football career, I was fortunate enough to have a good enough senior season that I was able to try out at the University of Iowa as a sprinter. And so my tryout period went really, really well. And it flourished into what became a 5-year career. I went from a tryout to, making the bus, and then from making the bus to making the Big Ten championships and getting some Big Ten medals. And I scored some points, and then, my career ultimately ended with what was one of my biggest goals, which was becoming a Division I All-American sprinter. So when I graduated from college, I was very much, everything track and field development wise, like I lived it. And I had parents reaching out as soon as I graduated, like, hey, can you train my son for this? Like, my kid just tore their ACL. Can you help them come back for that? And I was kind of limbo waiting to get into physical therapy school. So I'm like, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. And, of course I start my business officially, get my LLC going. And like a week or two later, bang, I get into physical therapy school. I'm moving to St. Louis just within like a week's notice. Classes start really quick. And so this just became like, all right, well, I kind of like this too. Okay, I'm down here in St. Louis. It's a major metro. There's like 3 million people here. Let's just see where this goes. If it pays my grocery bill occasionally or like fills my gas tank occasionally as a student, like that's fantastic. If it gets to be bigger, whatever. I was planning on graduating from physical therapy school, letting my business kind of die out and just go do what everyone does. You spend all this money to go to school. Let's go work in a clinic. Let's go work in a hospital setting. Let's just go, work a normal 9 to 5 and just go do what you're supposed to do. Well, I graduated during this thing called COVID. And so my plans went out the window really quick. I had hospitals interviewing me and things were going really well. Pandemic hits. Sorry, we're no longer hiring. We're no longer trying to fill that position. We can barely get patients in the door right now. So, maybe in another year or two, if this clears up, give us a call. And so it was either kind of sit on my hands and just wait on a PT job to open, or let's just take this speed thing and open a PT clinic and just take it as far as we possibly can. And so over the course of I'm starting year 8 now. I mean, it has just exploded. And at first it was in St. Louis, and then I got saturated and people were reaching out online. Well, can you help me online? Can you write me a program here? Can you give me guidance there? And so here I am. I work with people online. I work with people in St. Louis. Some people drive from as far as Iowa, Kentucky, or Kansas. Some people have come from the South to come up and work with me. And then other people are like really remote, completely remote. And I write them programs, consult with them. And I'm also doing physical therapy here in St. Louis as well. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. I get people who are healthy and performing, try to keep them even healthier, stronger, resilient to injury. And then if they happen to get hurt, I've got them here. Let's get you back working to performance, get you on the field ASAP using a performance mentality.
Wow, man. So you've got it pretty much covered from both sides. You know what I mean? Being able to take people that are already healthy or people that are injured and taking them all the way back. But you said 8 years in the game. What have you, over these past 8 years, seen kind of change in the game, and also from COVID times now that you're looking at, what has helped you, what has hurt you, and then also looking at technologies too.
I think what hurt me the most was thinking that my pedigree as an athlete was like who I was. So anytime somebody would call, hey, I heard you're working with this person, they got really good results, they recommended you. My default was, yeah, I did this at a high level, I'm really good at this myself, this is how I can help your athlete. Versus, hey, my methods have worked, here are the methods I've used, and here are some of the obstacles that I've run in with previous athletes that I've overcome. Here's how I can help you do the same. And I think just marketing myself as a professional versus marketing myself as an established former athlete gives way more credibility than going the other way. Like if you lead everything with, I did this at a high level so I can teach it, it's just false. Not everyone is built to teach this. You can be an Olympic champ and not know anything about training at all.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You've been given the map by somebody else to get there. So that doesn't automatically qualify you to be sort of a map maker yourself. So yeah, so that was maybe one of the biggest things that I've really changed my perspective on. And then in terms of technology, when I was first starting, I was bare bones. I had a stopwatch, I had a medicine ball, I had some measuring tape. I'm going to this field, I'm going to that field, I'm going to this gym, that gym, this school. And I feel like I got to start bare bones and work my way to technology when I finally earned it. But then when I finally had it, I was like so reliant on it that I felt like it almost tied my hands. Like I felt I had to justify the means of purchasing that piece of equipment. So I just used it in every session just because.
Mm.
And technology doesn't always fit every session. So, you know, you go all in on technology, then you sway out of it. You're like, am I using it too much, too little, not enough? Like, should I even use it at all? And so I've kind of gone from going so heavy in technology and really relying on it to sort of trying a more nuanced approach and just introducing it as it makes sense.
Man, you're hitting a lot of things on the head. You know what I mean? You talk about starting bare bones, and you talk about, kind of going into it with like that coach's eye. And I'm also saying that, hey, just because you were given the map doesn't mean that you know how to make a map. How hard was it to like yourself to realize that stuff? And how hard is it to kind of preach to former athletes that also are trying to go in this space that, yeah, you guys aren't like, we don't want you guys to hide behind your identity of saying that you're only an athlete, that you can become coaches, but there's a path to it all, right? And there's also, I'm sure you've seen it with over the 8 years, like there's an imposter syndrome that you also go through yourself as a coach. Like, do I fit in this role? So how have you been able to navigate this all, and then also, help other athletes that are trying to, and coaches that are trying to go into this role that you're in too?
I think that what helped me the most was I've always been super critical of myself. A lot of us, especially former athletes, are very, very much our own biggest critics. And so that kind of followed me into coaching. So what I found myself doing a lot early on was trying to emulate the things that I went through training wise. So I would just take workouts off the back of my head and just, here, athlete, do the workout I did. It worked really well for me, so surely it should work well for you. And what I quickly found is that, especially when you're not coaching at the level you came from, there's levels to this. And so I would be giving kids workouts that maybe weren't meant for them for another 4 or 5 years, and they would crash out and burn. And I was more focused on writing a workout than coaching an individual, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
I've got my X's and O's on paper. In my head, this has got to be great. Like, I spent so much time making this program. Go do 4 sets of whatever. Go do 3 sets of this with this rest period at this resistance for this long, and then move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But none of that matters if you're not coaching the kid in front of you. So, I had to quickly learn to emulate. If I do emulate anything, it's more the style of the coaching that I went through, not the specific X's and O's. And so when I started to put the athlete first in really dissecting their movement, their needs, their wants, their situation, and meeting them where they were, that's when things really started to change for me, because I thought I could just get away with painting with a broad brush and, just creating this one blanket program that just works for everybody because it came from me and my experiences are at a high level. Surely it'll work. No, it's not that simple. And so when I changed it to more of a holistic, individualized sort of mindset where, I'm meeting them where they are physically, mentally, emotionally, and dissecting their movement and communicating with them at a level that they can understand and put into action. That's when the whole thing changed for me.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's super important to meet, these athletes where they're at and continue to kind of not always be who I guess the best way to say is be who we needed when we were their age, right? Or when they were getting coached. What are some mechanical areas that you're seeing that you're getting a lot of your, like, getting with these athletes nowadays that you're seeing are hindering them from running really fast? Like, onboarding process is obviously, a thing that every coach goes through when they're bringing in a new client or anything. But are there some tendencies or mechanical things that you're seeing repeatedly through these youth athletes or even these athletes that are at a college or pro level that you're kind of seeing that's like hurting their speed?
Yeah. So I'll just give you an example. So I work with kids from the age of 11 all the way to, I've got professionals like in their late 20s, early 30s. And I had an MLB guy start with me about 3 years ago during his off season. And he was a heavy heel striker. He'd always had hamstring issues. He was very quick despite these things. And he's at the MLB level despite these things. And all we did was go through and change. Okay, you tend to overstride, you tend to heel strike, you tend to take excessively long strides that aren't quick and active, and you just seem passive as a whole. And we just introduced some frequency, teaching him how to run on his forefoot instead of on his heels. And essentially what that does is it decreases the amount of braking that takes place on each step. So we can say that in a 40-yard dash, for example, there's like 20-ish steps, plus or minus a few steps. If every single step is taken on the heel, overstriding, you're actively working against yourself to some degree on every step. When you watch NFL athletes break down on a route and then cut, they lean back and they go on their heels. Why? Because that's beneficial to slow down. So if you're trying to sprint at top speed and you're emulating mechanics that people use strategically to slow down, maybe we could do something a little better and a little different so that we're decreasing ground contact times, we're increasing frequency, and we're able to get a little more bang for our buck on every step versus if we don't intervene at all.
So how are you creating that to, change the frequency and get them out of the heel strike and too long of strides and putting too much pressure on the hamstrings? Like, what would a normal kind of day with you look like? And what areas, because I know this is an exciting thing for a lot of speed coaches, what part of the speed training do you like the most? Like, we're talking about like acceleration, top end speed, max velocity. What areas do you like to really harp on?
So I'll start with the first question. A day with me kind of looks like this. We're inside of an hour window, maybe 45 minutes. Dynamic warm up. During the whole warm up, I'm actively watching. I'm seeing what stretches are problematic. I'm seeing if you're wincing during certain movements, looking for different little nuances that, in my head, I can sort of go back to and say, oh, well, if you move like this, you might run into these issues. Man, I've had these issues for a while. How'd you know? I'm like, I can watch you. I can see. I've been doing this. Like, it makes sense. So we get out of the warm up, we get into movement prep. So that's going to be more of your sprint drill type things. And then whether it's an acceleration or top speed day, will kind of dictate whether we're doing some piston mechanics, or we're doing turnover mechanics. And once we get through those and we kind of check through these boxes where we've revved the engine up a little, we're going to start to do some different build-ups. So we're going to do maybe a couple 10s, 20s, and then get into the meat and potatoes of the workout, which, traditionally means like the big piece of it, but it doesn't actually take a lot of time. The most time you take is resting. So we're going to attack these sprints all out, 30, 40, 50 yards, something like that. And then I'm following what I call the golden rule for rest. You're going to rest 1 minute per 10 yards that you sprint. So if you sprint 10, you're resting a minute. You sprint 20, you're resting 2, 30, 3, all the way up to like 60 is where I max that out to 6 minutes. And if we sprint further than that, we're still going to probably max it out at 6 minutes, just because, if we're beyond that anyway, we're working some endurance components. So I'm not going to be able to rest you all the way within a 45-minute session. It's just not economical. We get through that, we'll probably do some either horizontal plyos or vertical plyos, horizontal jumps, vertical jumps, and then horizontal med balls or vertical med balls. We'll do some different pieces to check the boxes on their health and kind of address some aches and pains, some tightness, some soreness, send them on their way. And maybe that means I'm getting my hands on them, working on some hamstrings or hip flexors, quads, low back, ankles, calves, shins. Or maybe I just let them go. All right, good job. I'll see you in a couple days. So that's kind of quick and dirty. That's a session.
Yeah. Pretty solid day, though. That's a good day.
It's a great day. And it doesn't have to be more complicated than that for probably 90% of the population. Now, you get into track and field, things change in a big way. You've got to address Excel, transition, top speed, speed endurance, special 1, special 2, recovery days, tempo day. I mean, there's so many more pieces that are moving around.
And also the different distances that they run, 1s, 2s, 4s, hurdlers, all that different types of stuff, kind of comes into play too. I know with the track workouts.
Yep, exactly. So, so that's basically like, a skeleton version of what a day might look like. Now, in between each rep, we're going to go back, look at video. I'm going to coach them up on different pieces, give them some cues, give them some things to think about. And if it's still not clicking, I'll remove them from the workout. We're going to do some intervention drills, some sort of something to make them feel what I want them to feel. And then we'll go back and try to finish the workout or do some test reps so that, I don't want to build them without a solid foundation of movement. So if I think the foundation is there and then we're starting to build up and something's missing, I go back, I look for it, I fix it, get the cracks out of the foundation, and then we'll build back up. But, no matter where you are in the training program, the reason that I'm here is to address specific faults that other people might not be able to, because, a lot of team sports coaches are out there. They've got 50 kids in a session, 80 kids, maybe more, depending on the sport. There's no way you can possibly address everyone's needs in that session. Now, as a whole, you can get a lot of that group exponentially better just by being consistent and giving them sound training principles and never even really addressing movement individually. But if you're painting with this broad brush, there's going to be a significant portion of these kids who maybe you can get 4 or 5, 10% more out of them if you just give them just this little piece that they're missing. And it's insane. Like, I had a kid this Tuesday. We did 40-yard dashes. He's a really quick kid, powerful kid. He ran like a 4.9. He's mad. Why am I running a 4.9? Well, we go in the video and he's overstriding. He's got all these braking forces. We address it. Today he came out and ran a 4.68. Now, did I make him faster? No. I taught him how to use what tools he already has in a way that is positive and contributes to performance rather than working against it.
That's impressive, though, to be able to, in those couple of days, teach them how to go from a 4.9 to a 4.68. But obviously, video helps within there, and also yourself, knowing what you're looking for and how to be able to put that in words that he also understands is a tough part for a lot of coaches. But my other part of the question for you was, what part of speed do you like working the most?
The one that the athlete needs.
I love it. I love it. Somehow I knew that was gonna come from you because you just seem like a straight ahead guy. Whatever's gonna help the athlete is what I'm here for, and I love that about you.
Yeah, I mean, if a kid is weak, we're going to do some sleds, some resisted stuff. If a kid is strong but he's got bad mechanics, we're going to work top speed turnover. If there's someone who struggles with speed endurance, special endurance, composure, like we're going to do different things to challenge what I believe is going to help put them where they want to be. And so if I let my ego get in the way and like I'm biased toward acceleration, like acceleration for me changed my whole track career. Me learning the fundamentals of the start and being able to push and be patient and rise over time, like all of these things helped me go from 10.98 to 10.57. They helped me go from 22.41 to 21.18. Those things helped me improve a lot. So if I let my bias get involved, now suddenly I'm going to train everyone heavy toward acceleration. And I do, because a lot of them aren't very good at it. But
Right.
not everyone needs it as much as I did. So I need to make sure I check my ego in at the door and can just objectively say, you need this. Let's do that. All right. Now that box is checked. Let's look for the next here. Let's work that. Let's push this button for a while. Now let's revisit this to make sure it doesn't go away. And it's just kind of like, I think the art of coaching is sort of knowing when to push certain buttons, when to avoid certain buttons, when to kind of throttle things up, throttle down, dial it up, dial it back, and just doing it tastefully and tactically as it makes sense for the athlete and their situation.
Love it, coach. Now, we have two questions from guests that have been on before. First question is, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Obviously, you've been 8 years in the game. In 10 years, where do you see yourself? Now, second question is, what part of your training do you see as the most important part? Now, whether that's where in your programming is most important to you.
10 years. I've never really thought about that. I'm always like right in the moment. I'm
Yep.
not thinking too far ahead. I would say in 10 years, maybe I'm doing more education and mentoring and a little less on field, hands on coaching. Now, I never want to get too far away from it because I enjoy it a lot. I enjoy the interactions. I like to learn about different people's experiences and kind of what makes them tick because my background, I love the science and human physiology piece, but I love the psychology piece as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I enjoy those sorts of interactions. So yeah, probably a little more coaching or a little more education, consulting, mentoring, and a little less hands-on. You know, I've got a daughter now. So in 10 years, she'll be 10 years old. I'll be trying to be more of a father and well, I'm already trying to be as much of a father as I can, but
Welcome to the girl dad life. I'm right there
yeah,
with you.
thank you. Thank you. So yeah, versus years past when I've been very much like I want to work 7 days a week as much as I possibly can. Like now I've got to make that work life balance in a way that I've never had to do it before. And it's been a challenge, but I'm hoping in 10 years I've got it figured out.
Me too. I'm right there with you on that one. Oh yeah. Um, so then what would you ask, our next listener, our next guest that comes on? What would be one question that you want to ask them?
I would ask the next person who their top three mentors or who have they looked to the most for answers or guidance or learning from mistakes. Something like that I think would be really beneficial
That's
because
something
a
we'll
lot of
definitely.
a lot of us don't really reflect enough on kind of where we come from and what's made us the coaches we are today. And there's a lot of coaches that a lot of us have had experience with, whether as athletes, whether as people mentoring us, colleagues, professors. I mean, there's so many different people you can point to for just making you think this much different, but changing your life in a massive way.
Yeah, exactly. And that is it for the day, Brendan. We appreciate you hopping on. We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day. Super excited to continue to follow on what you're doing along your journey, and also just excited to see what you do as a girl dad. Hopefully 10 years down the line, we both have it figured out, but who knows? Hopefully we're just being the best dads we can be. But thank you
It's
so
all
much for your time, man, and we're looking forward to everything.
awesome. Thanks again for having me on. And yeah, we'll be in touch.
For sure. We're out.